special presentation.
It's the third day of the Great Canadian Book Debate. We started with 5 titles, all with the power to change the narrative. We've said goodbye to 2 so far. 3 books are still in the running. Which one will be the next to go? We'll find out today. I'm your host, Ali Hassan. This is Canada Reads.
This is Canada Reads, Canada's annual title fight.
We've had 2 days of debate, and we have 2 to go. We're looking for the one book to change the narrative. Let's meet our panelists around the Canada Reads table. To my left, best-selling thriller author Linwood Barclay. Hello, Linwood.
Hello, it's great to be here again.
Yes, thanks for coming back. I never had any doubt. Next to him, Olympic swimming champion Maggie Mac Neil. Hi, Maggie.
Good morning.
Good morning. Across from me, neuroscientist turned pastry chef Saïd M'Dahoma. Hello, Saïd.
Hello.
And next to Saïd, Canadian actor and director Michelle Morgan. Hello, Michelle.
Good morning.
To my right, podcaster and Indigenous wellness advocate Shayla Stonechild. Hi, Shayla.
Tanse.
Your Canada Reads 2025 contenders. It's been an exciting debate thus far. On day 1, we said goodbye to Watch Out for Her by Samantha M. It was championed by Maggie Mac Neil. On day 2, yesterday, Jennie's Boy by Wayne Johnston was eliminated in a 3-1-1 vote. Linwood Barclay, you were championing that title. How are you feeling today?
Oh, I'm okay. But I was thinking a lot about it last night, and when you have a few bestsellers under your belt, and you get kind of a swelled head, and you think that everybody knows who you are, and then that bubble gets burst a lot when somebody says, "Oh, well, you have written anything I'd have read?" I don't know, So it's very likely that there's still a lot of people who don't know Wayne Johnston's work. And Wayne has, written wonderful books like The Navigator of New York, The Son of a Certain Woman, which is one of my favorites, The Colony of Unrequited Dreams, which the Globe and Mail had called one of the 100 best Canadian works of literature ever written. So I'm hopeful that for those who still haven't discovered, Wayne Johnston, that Jennie's Boy may take them to his work, and we'll find out that he is a national treasure.
All right.
And I'm proud to have been a champion for this book this week.
Thank you for reminding us about this book and why all of Canada should read Jennie's Boy. Maggie, you were a free agent yesterday. You played the role of a wild card quite well. Any advice for Linwood today?
I would say have fun, enjoy having a lot more power than you do when you're trying to convince other people why your book should stay in the competition. But it's really fun to just listen to the really great debate and hear what everyone has to say.
Have fun, enjoy power, listen to a great debate. Great advice. Thank you, Maggie. All right. Maggie and Linwood are our free agents. They hold the power to decide which books go on to the final. 2 books are down. 3 are still in the running. Dandelion by Jamie Chai Yun Liew, chosen by Saïd M'Dahoma. Etta and Otto and Russell and James by Emma Hooper, backed by Michelle Morgan. You guys are quick with your books. To the Camera and A Two-Spirit Journey by Ma-Nee Chacaby, written with Mary Louisa Plummer, championed by Shayla Stonechild. Let's check out the books still in contention. So, selecting a book for Canada Reads is like a matchmaking process. Sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's an arduous process. But when you've found the one, you know. So today's question is, why is the book you selected the right book for you? Saïd, you're championing Dandelion by Jamie Chai Yun Liew. As we mentioned, here's the trailer.
When Lily was 11 years old, her mother left. Lily, her sister, and father remained. In a small BC mining town, Lily struggles to understand why, but there are no traces, and the only way to move is forward. Now, Lily is a new mother. Feeling lost and untethered, she begins to look for answers and finds herself on a journey to Southeast Asia to uncover the truth. There she learns that there's always more than what meets the eye. To some, the dandelion is a weed. To others, it's a flower. Beautiful, resilient. It can make its roots anywhere.
Saïd, why is Dandelion the right book for you to champion on Canada Reads? 60 seconds are on the clock.
I chose to champion Dandelion because I could see myself in both Lily and her parents. My parents moved from Comoros to France, where I was born and raised. Like Lily, I had complicated feelings about my identity. Do I belong to my parents' country or the one where I was born? I was ashamed of my parents' traditions, my hair, my nose. But just like Lily, I also loved part of my heritage, like my mother's food or my grandmother's vanilla. 10 years ago, I moved to Calgary, where my experience is similar to Lily's parents. Like them, I love Canadian snow, butter tarts, the generosity of Calgarians. I do still miss croissants, baguettes, and my family, though. What makes Dandelion a great book is how well written the characters are and how much they evolve. This book helped me reconcile with my different identities and understand myself better. Read Dandelion if you want to immerse yourself in a multi-generational story where the characters are on a journey to discover themselves, and you might learn something new about yourself too.
Thank you, Saïd. All right, Michelle, you're championing Etta and Otto and Russell and James by Emma Hooper. Here's the trailer.
Etta is 82 and dreams of the ocean. She's never been. So one morning, she packs some chocolate, a map, a rifle, and heads toward the water. She can't remember much, but she knows she is going east. Back in Saskatchewan, her husband Otto stays behind, waiting. He saw the ocean during his time in the war, a time he longs to forget. Russell, their neighbor, ventures to bring Etta home. What if she gets hurt? What if she forgets? But Etta has no plans to stop her journey. Tangled memories and unfinished letters reveal their past. Throughout their history, Etta and Otto waited patiently for each other. This time is no different.
Michelle, why is Etta and Otto and Russell and James the right book for you to champion on Canada Reads? I'll give you 60 seconds to respond.
What initially drew me to this book was the vivid, gritty depictions of life on the farm in Saskatchewan during the Great Depression and the Second World War. I love being transported to another time and place. And then, of course, I met Etta, the funny, tough, determined woman who happens to be in the early stages of dementia. And I thought of my mom, who is farther along than Etta and physically could not manage that journey, but it did make me see my mom's strong will, her sense of humor, and a glimmer of hope. And I believe many people will feel the same connection because there are over 800,000 Canadians living with dementia today. And finally, the characters in this book are coming to terms with their decisions, and they're facing themselves outside of the roles they've played, outside of the labels that have been put on them. And as a mother and a wife and an actor, I find it fascinating to consider my own identity. Who am I outside of these roles? What matters to me at my core? And if I had one final journey, what might that be?
Thank you, Michelle. All right, Shayla, you're championing the memoir A Two-Spirit Journey by Ma-Nee Chacaby, written with Mary Louisa Plummer. Here's the trailer.
Two spirits live inside you. This is what my kokum, my grandmother, used to say to me. 1952, Umbabaka. I learned to make moccasins with Mom and how to hunt with my stepdad. Grief, abuse, addiction, experiences that stay with me long after I have to leave. 1975, Thunder Bay. I get sober. I come out to my friends and family. Some people don't understand. I lean on the ones who do. 2013, I helped lead the first gay pride parade in the city. I find comfort in nature, in healing, in the memory of my kokum. My name is Ma-Nee Chacaby. I am an Ojibwe Cree elder, and this is my story.
Shayla, why is A Two-Spirit Journey the right book for you to champion on Canada Reads? I'll give you 60 seconds to state your case.
Why I am the best champion for A Two-Spirit Journey by Ma-Nee Chacaby. Reading A Two-Spirit Journey, I was deeply moved by Ma-Nee's fearlessness, honesty, and resilience. Despite being visually impaired and carrying intergenerational trauma and going through many forms of abuse, she still used her voice as a force for healing and truth. Her story made me reflect on the many Indigenous voices silenced by systems that sought to erase us. My father went to LeBret Residential School. He was in the child welfare system. He was in the prison system, yet he was a strong advocate for Indigenous rights and for our healing. Yet he never had the chance to share his experiences, his joys, his sorrows, his dreams, or his warrior spirit. Because unfortunately, he eventually took his life within the very system that sought to suppress him. I think about the hundreds of thousands of Indigenous people, of Indigenous women, Two-Spirit individuals, and children that were never given the chance to use their voice in this country. And that's why I'm using mine today. We have so much power within us. We are not the trauma that was inflicted on us. We are healers, we are leaders, and we are connected to Creator. And we have every power to use our voice.
Thank you, Shayla. I should also mention the supports that we offer if you go to cbcbooks.ca. For people who are listening and watching today, you can go to the website. I think they'll be on the screen as well. We will be talking about some heavy topics inevitably today. So please use those at your discretion. Well, there you have it, the 3 remaining books. They are Dandelion by Jamie Chai Yun Liew, chosen by Saïd M'Dahoma. Etta and Otto and Russell and James by Emma Hooper, backed by Michelle Morgan. And A Two-Spirit Journey by Ma-Nee Chacaby, written with Mary Louisa Plummer, championed by Shayla Stonechild. One of these books will be eliminated today, and 2 titles will go on to the final round. I'm Ali Hassan. This is Canada Reads on CBC and Sirius XM. Panelists, get ready. It is time to debate. So I mentioned the remaining books, Dandelion, Etta and Otto and Russell and James, and A Two-Spirit Journey. They each involve difficult subject matter, but they all have hope. Which book's representation of hope in difficult times did you connect with the least, and why? Linwood, I'm going to start with you.
Connect with the least? Well, I wanted to talk a bit about Dandelion because although it reads at times like a memoir, it is fiction, and fiction, I think, allows you certain liberties, and you can play around with it and so forth. And as a very much this book it becomes a quest, and Lily's trying to find her mother, and I was thinking about, someone said a long time ago, the Star Trek movie, The Search for Spock. I mean, suppose you watched that movie, at the very end, they said, well, we didn't find him. And it would be a bit of a disappointment. And I think I was hoping in that particular book that we would reach to a point where there would be some kind of a resolution that would, I think, bring some kind of, and I hate this as a cliche, but some sort of closure for Lily. And I don't feel like we got that. And I thought it was an interesting choice for the author to make, because as fiction, you can kind of do what you want to do. And so I wish there had been a kind of an opportunity for some different kind of a resolution in that novel.
I think the closure, we got closure. The closure we got was when we see Lily learning more about her mother, learning more about why she did what she did, why she left. We got also closure because, how can I say that? We can see that she started to break intergenerational trauma. So there's so many things that her mother was not able to do. She was not able to embrace the culture of Canada. Lily was able to, and I think that's powerful to see that even if your mother disappeared, you still managed to heal. You managed to break that intergenerational trauma.
Maggie, let me put that question to you. Once again, it's the idea of this. Which book's representation of hope in difficult times did you connect with the least, and why?
I think it's interesting going off of what you two just spoke about, how there's different representations of hope in the book. And Lily is so invested and really hopeful that her mother is alive, but on the other hand, her sister B could care less and was really kind of focused on moving on past that point. So it's interesting to get those kind of contrasting perspectives. That being said, I would think similarly of Etta and Otto as well. Etta's hopeful that she's going to make it to the water, but Otto kind of just lets her be, and that could just be because, like we discussed the other day, he had his trauma back when he went to war and has seen the water and wasn't interested in accompanying her on this journey. Or I don't even know if a part of him, I wonder, even thought she would make it there, and that kind of contrasting hope as well.
Okay. Michelle?
Yeah, I have to agree with Linwood that, well, first of all, I do think you're right, that there was a beautiful closure and that she did try to end that intergenerational trauma. But it didn't really land for me because the story didn't land for me in general of the mother leaving. A healthy mother, a good wife who'd raised her children for a decade, who didn't have substance abuse problems or seemingly even a history of mental illness, which maybe was hidden. But for her to walk away and never come back, I just found that hard to swallow and believe. And then when Lily finds Peter, who finally gives her the final answers that her mother had sadly committed suicide, Lily asks the question we all wonder, why didn't she come back and find us if she was so tortured? And the answer, it was so unsatisfying. He literally said something along the lines of, she didn't like Canada. That was like a quote, something about she not liking. And as a mother, as a parent, you don't even need to be a parent. That's not a good enough answer. So it just didn't, I wasn't satisfied with that.
Yeah, and I understand why you wouldn't be satisfied with that, but I think that if you reread the book, there are actually so many different reasons why the mother left. And it's not just because she didn't like Canada. When she said that she didn't like Canada, there's more than just she didn't like being there. She didn't like the racism that she endured when she was there. She didn't like not being able to connect with anyone. She's trying so hard at some points in the book to connect with her neighbors, but she gets rejected. She wants to play tennis, but she gets rejected. She's always trying to fit, buying cookbooks, and it doesn't work. And she misses her family, she misses everything. She's also traumatized by what happened with her newborn son. There's so much that is happening. That's why I think that I could believe it. Also, yeah, one last thing is the betrayal of her husband. Because when Lily's mother, Sweeha, lost her mother who was overseas, it was too much for her. And I could relate to that because when my mother was sick, I was here in France, she was in France, I was here in Canada, she was in France, and I got to say goodbye before she passed away because someone called me and told me, hey, she's sick, you have to come now. If anyone were to take that away from me and not tell me that my mother was sick, I don't think I would ever trust them again. I don't think I would be able to forgive them. And I don't think that Sweeha was able to forgive her husband. It was too much for her.
Saïd, let me put the question back to you for this round as well. What book's representation of hope in difficult times did you connect with the least?
I think for me, the one I had the most difficulty with was probably Etta and Otto. Probably because at the end of the book, especially the end felt so rushed. I did not really understand what was going on. I did not know if Etta was happy to reach the sea. And I felt like it was so sad that at the end of their lives, they were separated, that they were not able to stay with each other till the end.
Yeah, that's a valid point. I was just rereading the end before we came in, and if you remember, actually, they meet under the water because she reaches the water and she actually goes into the water. And he comes and says goodbye. And I thought that was actually a really poignant remark on that we can actually be together when we're not together. Mm-hmm. We can carry each other in our hearts and our spirits. And then there is a final chapter, which is 2 sentences. She says goodbye to Otto, and she says, "Don't worry, Otto, it's all a loop, it's a long loop." And the last chapter is, Otto's train was due in 7 minutes. Etta stood on the platform and waited for the wind it would bring. So it's like that reminder that, like, it's not just this moment now, it's all the moments we've had. Mm-hmm. But if it wasn't satisfying for you, that's a valid.
With the last minute and a bit we have, Shayla, I'm going to pivot to you, but I'm also going to change the question a little bit. I'm going to ask you, what does your book say about resilience?
Oh my gosh, what my book says about resilience, I literally think Ma-Nee has gone through every form of abuse, unfortunately, yet she has resolution, she has solutions at the end. You come along this journey for, 64 years, but by the end of it, she's a part of protests. She's leading healing ceremonies at the beginning of big protests. She helps Alcohols Anonymous in translating it into Ojibwe and Cree and handing those translations out to northern communities. So she's actively participating in resolution and in healing, and I think that's what I really enjoyed about this. It didn't just leave you with trauma, it left you wanting to take action in your own life.
Okay, we'll have to leave it there. That is it for this round. For this round, I want to focus on writing, and I wanted to compare the 3 books on the table directly. Specifically, I wanted you to do that. The writing style for all 3 is very different. And with that in mind, which book is the best written? Maggie, let's start with you.
I personally gravitated, I think, the most to Dandelion, just the way it was organized and the stylistic writing. I am very much a person that enjoys reading from the first person. You can get in their heads a little bit more. You can understand the thoughts that they necessarily don't say verbally. So I really thought it was well organized that way, and just the writing kind of was very cohesive, and I was able to follow the story really easily. Also, though, I really enjoyed the images and figures and graphics included in Two-Spirit, just because I think it really helped me to understand the content better and just be able to picture it in my brain a little bit more.
Linwood, you've spoken about writing and craft a fair amount.
Yeah, I think even though I have a number of problems with Etta and Otto and so forth, I think some of the best writing of any of the books is in that book. And it has so much of it. It has such a kind of ethereal quality about it in so much of the writing that even though as a whole I kind of have some problems with that book, I think a lot of the writing is terrific. I like the writing in Dandelion. It doesn't try to impress. It's very straightforward. The writing in Two-Spirit Journey to me it's really more like a transcript. And it's a really valuable transcript, and I think everyone would benefit from reading it. In terms of actual writing, I think it's not a great read. It's not artful. There's not a lot of craft in the writing of it, but I don't think that's what it was ever intended to be. But in terms of just really some fine writing, I would say that it's Etta and Otto and Russell and James.
Shayla?
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point that it wasn't maybe the most artistic way of writing, or it didn't have a stylistic approach such as Etta and Otto and Russell and James. But I want to remind listeners that A Two-Spirit Journey was written with Ojibwe Cree elder Ma-Nee Chacaby and also Mary Louisa Plummer. And they talk about it in the afterword, how this was written through honoring 2 methods of sharing, one being Western social science and one Indigenous research and knowledge sharing methods. And so when you're sharing stories through an Indigenous framework, there's a few things that are in play. And one important factor is the relationship between the researcher and the research participant. And so Mary and Ma-Nee have a history of trust, which allows for collaboration. And so that's often something you see within Western writing, is they don't like you don't want to have a deep relationship between the researcher and the participant because it could create a bias. When Indigenous knowledge sharing methods actually honors that, because relationships are important to Indigenous storytelling and to the way that we share our stories. So for that reason, I honor that way of writing because it's totally different. And I think it also offers listeners a great example of what collaboration looks like with Indigenous people and how we can come to this table together and write stories and learn from each other through Indigenous knowledge sharing methods.
See, I think that's a really valid point. I guess what I'm thinking is word of mouth is everything in this business. You know, you can look at you can read reviews of a book, you can hear some commercials for it, but often it's someone just says, you got to read this, and they just hand it to you, or it's a bookseller. And you know, what you want someone to say to us, this is a really good read. And I think on that level, I think it fails. But yet the content is so worthy.
I have to jump in that I have to agree with Linwood. This is a super important book. I think everyone should read it. I learned the most from it. Like Maggie said, I learned so much from it. I hope we all read it. From a truth and reconciliation standpoint, it's really important. But Mary Louisa Plummer says in the afterwards, she approached it as a social scientist. She approached it chronologically, and it's an academic text. I don't think many people, or I think many people will struggle to get through it because it's so dense and so dry, and there's so much information. And in a country teeming with talented writers, including from the Indigenous community, it kind of seems a shame that Canada Reads will be given to like a kind of a dense academic text, even though the story is so important. There's so many writers who could do so much with that story. And not that Mary Louisa Plummer failed. They accomplished what they set out, but it isn't a good read. And that story would be so much more accessible, put in a different form that was more of a read.
And that's what I think it is, though. I think out of all the books here, this story was probably the most accessible for me to read. I felt it very easy to read. And maybe if reading what, you can listen to the audiobook. And so for listeners, readers out there, I would invite you, maybe if you are finding it a little more challenging and difficult to read, listen to the audiobook, because it's like she is in the room with you, and it's almost like you're in a conversational relationship with the cookum, with the grandmother. And so if that is a challenge for you, then listen to the audiobook. And that's what I love about reading, is there's so many forms to gather knowledge nowadays.
Saïd, let me get you in here and put that question back to you. The question is about writing, and as we said, they're all very different styles, but which book was the best written in your mind?
In my opinion, it was Etta, Otto, Russell and James. I think it's the neuroscientist in me that really enjoyed that book, that really enjoyed seeing a representation of what the mind of someone with dementia can look like. I thought it was really well written. I thought it was you going from timeline to timeline, being confused all the time. It was confusing readers, but I think that was the point. The point was to make you feel like you at least imagine what it can be like to have that disease. That's why I really like this one.
Thank you.
Michelle, I would offer to go to a rebuttal with you. I don't think there's anything to rebut there when you get a glowing review from a fellow panelist. We'll leave it there. Thank you. That is it for this round. All right, panelists, it's been a long, engaging 2.5 days. We are not done yet. We have some special words of encouragement, however, to get you to that finish line. Have a listen to this.
Hi, Michelle. It's Linda Jando from Book Club. We all want to let you know how inspirational you've been. Your accomplishments are incredible as an actor, director, producer, artist, wife, mother, and friend. And you've brought our book club together to meet Emma Hooper. You've got all our votes. Cheers.
Hi, Saïd, Pat here, just wishing you all the best in the Canada Reads competition. From our humble beginnings in pain research to what you've managed to achieve as a pastry nerd is nothing short of amazing. Your passion, creativity, and overall fun oozing out of every pore makes me think any recommendation from you needs to come with the highest consideration. Good luck.
Shayla, hi my girl, it's Kai. It's your time to shine on Canada Reads. Ma-Nee is actually one of my elders, and she's such a fiery spirit, and I see that same energy in you. Your passion, your voice, your fire, nobody is ready, but they're gonna need to be. Speak from the heart. I'm sending you all of my two-spirit magic. I'm so proud of you. Love you, my girl. Go slay it. Mwah.
That's a part of the show where you all move your eyes rapidly back and forth to keep them dry, and you did a good job at that. Those were the voices of Linda Jando, Michelle's friend and member of Michelle's book club. Pat Stamkowski, who is Saïd's friend from the University of Calgary, who Saïd has clearly forgotten about until this very moment. You remember him.
This is Pat.
You have put your pain research days out of your mind.
No, how did you find him?
That's what Canada Reads
I recognized the voice, but I could just, oh wow.
And finally, we heard from Kai Potts, who's the host of the Real Rank podcast and Shayla's good friend. I'm Ali Hassan. This is Canada Reads on CBC and SiriusXM. Let's get back to the debate. All right, we have 2 novels and a memoir on the table, but all 3 books do feature people traveling on various physical, mental, or emotional journeys as they seek to discover who they are. And the 3 contending books on the table explore themes of transformation, self-discovery, and the human condition. Now, which book took you on a journey that you found the least satisfying, and why? Linwood, I'm going to ask you first as our newest free agent.
Well, as I said earlier, I really admire a lot of the writing in Etta and Otto and Russell and James, but I did find the journey somewhat frustrating because the book does have a very kind of ethereal quality, and I know that one of the points and what Emma's trying to do is take a look at dementia and so forth. But I think, for me, that ethereal quality for the whole novel, I was starting to sort of question what was the mental state of some of the other characters, because like Otto, I mean, we're talking about, Etta and her, dealing with the struggle with dementia, and Otto, he's building paper mache figures and he's letting her go off on her own, and I'm sort of thinking, I'm not so sure about how he is either, and so I did find the book frustrating in that way, and I felt that that kind of magical realism, perhaps, of that novel, of the approach, meant that what it might be trying to accomplish in tackling the subject of dementia actually detracted from it, because that sense of wonder or confusion or whatever seemed to permeate a lot of the book. So that was kind of my take.
Yeah. I wondered about Otto at first as well. Like, why didn't he follow her? Why is he suddenly... what I finally came to, and this was towards the end of reading it, because at first I was like, why is he doing this? I think he just had to do something with his hands. But also because we meet them when they're young and then we meet them at the end of their lives, we have to fill in the gaps of the conversations they've had, of her telling him, I have to see the ocean. And then in terms of the magical realism, I personally thought it was employed very, very well. And dealing with someone with dementia, I sometimes feel like I'm dealing with someone who I just have to meet her where she is. Because reality, she'll talk about us as if we're still children, and her timelines jump. So I actually thought it was really accurately executed, but I take your point.
Maggie, let's have your thoughts here.
No, I completely agree with what Linwood said. I spent a lot of the book kind of second-guessing myself. Like you had mentioned yesterday, I wasn't sure if she had picked Halifax as the destination because that's where her sister was in the convent, and then kind of the whole journey along it, like Russell kind of disappeared at some point to go and find caribou up north or something. So I think there could have definitely been a little bit more character development on his part. But it was interesting that he did and wanted to go find Etta and then just let her be and knew she was on her way. So I think I kind of struggled with that a little bit. It was also interesting seeing what Otto was doing while she was on a walk, and I think the inclusion of the recipes was an interesting touch, and I actually wonder if that cinnamon bun recipe is that any
real.
good?
It's a family recipe. Yeah,
Cool.
It's a family recipe. You should try it. I guess we get so much backstory, particularly of Russell, I think, like in the childhood. Yeah. And it's true, we don't, that whole gap, right? But I think Emma's approach is show, don't tell. And she wants us to come to our own conclusion. Have you ever heard the theory, the author is dead? This was a famous French thinker who said the intentions of essentially what he said is the intention of the author doesn't matter. The author is dead. It's the intention that you bestow on it is the intention.
Michelle, I'm going to put the question back to you. Which book took you on a journey that you found the least satisfying, and why?
After Saïd was so kind to me, I find it hard to say that.
He's pointed you in a corner.
Look, there's only 3 books here. Here's the thing was, you know, you mentioned that you found the beginning of it, that the beginning some people found slow. I disagree. I actually found the beginning, I could get right into it because Lily grew up the same time as me. We're both like born in the 80s. And I know what Southern BC and Alberta towns are like. So I was really invested in that. And I think Jamie's power of description is so powerful. But as she goes on this journey, I find myself, I kept getting taken out of it because in the dialogue, there's so much exposition. Do you know what I mean? Like, exposition is when in novels and in film, when people say things that are just to give the audience information, just to give you context, just to explain the characters. So they say things. I found that happened quite a bit in the book. In the first 2 pages of meeting the family, they're talking about statelessness, citizenship, papers for owning a business, sponsorship. They're literally like outlining in detail these things like with a lawyer's accuracy. And I felt like I could see the exposition popping out at me. And that took me out of the journey. And I felt like that happened throughout the book, like learning about the Hokkien people. It's like, it felt like, okay, now we're all going to sit down and talk about the cultural significance of the Hokkien people. And that took me out of it, and so it kind of took me out of the journey sometimes.
I understand where you are coming from. And I find it interesting because just yesterday, I was at a restaurant and the waiter had a French accent. So we started to connect. We started to talk about this. And we had more or less the same conversation as the conversation that happened at the beginning of the book. We were talking about our visa, our permanent residency. How did we get it? How do you feel here? Isn't that better than in France in some ways? And those are real conversations that still happen between people. People are always chatting about this because those, especially if you talk about things like statelessness or having your permanent residency, there's so much stress about this because you always think, okay, when is it that I'm going to get my citizenship? When is it that I'm going to be able to stay and that nobody will be able to detain me or kick me out of the country just because they want to? I know it might sound weird, but immigrants, they keep talking about those topics all the time.
I'm glad you made that point about the exposition because that was actually my biggest problem with Dandelion. Is in publishing, we call that an info dump. You know, when people start saying things, boy, I haven't seen you since 1964 when my sister Janice was married to, nobody talks that way. And that was perhaps my biggest kind of criticism of that book.
I should also say, Michelle, you had said, Saïd was so kind to me. You're all very kind to each other. But this is about the book, so I wouldn't worry too much about the kindness. And on that note, Shayla, just before we end this round, let me get you in with the same question, a book that took you on a journey that was the least satisfying.
The least satisfying for me was Etta and Otto and Russell and James. I just felt like the stakes weren't high enough for me, and at the beginning I wasn't sure quite completely about her motive for wanting to go and see the water. She even says, like, maybe I should go away, and she's like, I will try to remember to come back. And then so it just like feels a little wishy-washy even before she leaves. And for that reason, I wasn't as emotionally invested in wanting to join her on that journey because she somewhat felt unsure of it herself. And then, yeah, for her husband not to like go want to find her, it made me question their love a little bit, because if that was my partner and she had dementia and she was older, I would be so concerned about her. And so it made me just question little parts about the story. And I think it was a little bit lost, the emotional investment through the magical realism that was in there and then the stylistic approach. So I felt the emotional investment just wasn't there for me because I was getting lost in all these other things.
We will have to leave it there. That is it for this round. I wasn't sure if that was magical realism or two snakes going through the water, but I thought that was Maggie. Your arms are doing some things, yeah. The 3 books still in play on Canada Reads explore the many forms of love, be it romantic love, love for friends, love of family, community, even love of ourselves. And in times like these, we need love more than ever. So I'm going to ask which book brought a fresh perspective to depicting love in all its forms. Linwood.
That's a really good question because, I mean, I think Dandelion really explores sort of the absence of love, because it's the need for it, but that you've lost it, and so it takes a kind of a different approach. I mean, to how do you process when your mother decides to just leave you? And so I think love is actually a really strong thing in that book, but it's the absence. To look at it in a completely opposite way, I think that Etta and Otto and Russell James explores that sort of the need for each other and finding it. So it's a kind of between the two, and in a two-spirit journey, I think it's, I don't know if this makes sense, it's sort of the love of perseverance and having that love of being able to continue. Because I mean, when I read that, I would have been defeated any number of times had I been Ma-Nee. And so I think we have sort of three very different kind of representations.
Shayla, what are your thoughts on what you just heard, and a book that does has a fresh perspective on depicting love?
Yeah, I would say A Two-Spirit Journey offers readers an insight into unconditional love, no matter where you come from. Like you had mentioned, she had every right to give up and to not persevere. And also, she didn't need to take care and be a service of so many people that she met along her journey. She was taking in homeless youth. She was helping out with Alcoholics Anonymous. She was helping pregnant women on the streets. You know, all throughout her journey, she didn't have to provide unconditional love to strangers, but she still did, because that just speaks to who she is as a person. And I love how you represented love in three different ways, which I think we can definitely see. I think Etta and Otto and Russell and James, you know, I love the moments between the letters, and you could really see the relationships between all the characters. But for me, like I had mentioned, I just wasn't as emotionally invested in the character's journey, so therefore it was a nice depiction, but I didn't really like feel it in my whole being. But Dandelion I did, because I could really relate to some of the stories, and I just felt like Lily was on a journey to find her mother, because she became a mother herself, because she had that much love for her, being a mom, and for wanting to find out the answers for her mom. And I found that really inspiring, and I could feel that more in my being than I could feel in Etta and Otto and Russell and James.
Michelle, some thoughts about that?
Well, you know, when we talk about love, I do want to mention that the relationship between Ma-Nee and her grandmother, like, her grandmother deserves to be like knighted. She's just an amazing woman, blind, and in her 80s goes and finds her when she's, you know, just crazy. But also, I think this Etta and Otto and Russell and James is a really interesting, complex look at love, because it's usually portrayed as very straightforward and very possessive kind of love in books and in film. But this is like a more realistic approach, because we also have Russell, who loves Etta, and she loves him as well. And he sort of can't be part of that relationship, but is on the outside of it. And that's a very real thing that happens in life, that there's sometimes other people that we love in a different way. And then Etta and Otto, at the end of their life, of course they have this love and this bond, but it's so strong that they can let each other go. And that it's not a selfish love.
Yeah. Maggie, let me get your thoughts on this.
No, I'm thinking about what Shayla said about how Ma-Nee took in all these kids and took responsibility for them, even her own family members when she was older, and looked after her younger baby brother, and was always like, her door was always open to whoever needed it. So I think that's a special kind of love. And then it's interesting with the love triangle and Etta and all, is I wish we knew a little bit more about, was Otto aware of kind of that relationship between Etta and Russell? Obviously he was at war. I think it would have been interesting to know whether or not he did, because obviously their love was very special through the letters and through the duration of it, obviously from child in the schoolhouse. And Russell was originally the child that said, oh, like, we have this really amazing teacher, like, I love her.
Obsessed with her.
And so I think that would have been interesting to kind of explore that dynamic a little bit more.
Saïd, the main question back to you, which book brought a fresh perspective on love?
Obviously, I just want to reply to Linwood. I really like the fact that he noticed that absence of love. And I think it's in Dandelion, there's always that play between the absence of love and the love that breaks intergenerational trauma. There's love that hurts, love that heals. And that's one of the strengths of Dandelion, because her friends, her relatives who stayed despite, and not her mother, help her get better. what the depiction of love that I like the most is the one in Etta et al. I just felt warm reading the whole book. I just love the relationship between all the different characters. Now that you explain me the ending of the book, I understand better, and I find this so poetical. It's so beautiful. I just really like this book when it comes to representations of love.
Linwood, I'm going to turn the last words to you for this round.
This has been a really interesting discussion, I think, because and some of the questions that you asked and approaching it has made me rethink how I feel about these three books. And the love question.
Will you be revealing that rethinking, or will we find out together
we'll
as a
probably
country?
Find out shortly,
Very
I
shortly.
would imagine. Yes.
Yeah. All
no.
right. Okay, great. We'll leave it there. That is it for this round. So, today we heard a lot about the three remaining books. Contenders, I'm now giving you each one last chance to champion your book before we head into today's elimination vote. Saïd, your final chance. Make a case for why Dandelion should not be voted off Canada Reads. 30 seconds are on the clock.
I've talked a lot about the immigration connection with Dandelion, but I actually don't think that you have to be an immigrant to connect with Dandelion. If you are born and raised Canadian and move to another province, you know what it's like to miss your hometown, your relatives, the food and scenery you used to enjoy. It's not that intense as immigrating, but this country is big enough for you to experience something similar to a certain extent. And if you've never moved, have you ever tried to fit in a group, to be part of a community and still get rejected despite everything you are doing? That's how immigration can feel like.
Thank you, Saïd. Okay, Michelle, you're next. You have a final 30 seconds to convince your fellow panelists that Etta and Otto and Russell and James should stay on another day on Canada Reads. You have 30 seconds.
Emma Hooper has approached this novel with a simple, poignant language and a musician's creativity and an open heart that deserves to be celebrated and read by all Canadians. This is the book Canada needs right now, because in a world that often tells us we are too old, too late, or too lost, Etta and Otto and Russell and James has a hopeful message. There's still time. Keep going.
Thank you, Michelle. Shayla, it is your turn. Please make one final argument that convinces your fellow panelists to keep a two-spirit journey on the Canada Reads table. 30 seconds are on the clock.
A two-spirit journey should be kept on Canada Reads because this story is not only about trauma and suffering, it is about unconditional love, whether that's within two-spirit relationships, whether that's being service to other people, or whether that's just the love for telling your own story and speaking your own truth. Ma-Nee inspires you to take action and agency in your own life and to be an advocate for others, but also to be an advocate to love yourself a little bit deeper.
Thank you. Happy not to interrupt you. That is the end of today's debate. Oh, yeah. It is time to vote. Panelists, you're used to this by now. You have your ballots in front of you. Your job is to mark an X beside the book you want to eliminate from the competition. Once you have voted, Julia from the Canada Reads team will take your ballot. Once again, I remind you all, there are no secret ballots on Canada Reads. Watch Out for Her was eliminated on day 1. Jennie's Boy was eliminated on day 2. And a third title will join them in a few moments. Will it be Dandelion by Jamie Chai Yun Liew, chosen by Saïd M'Dahoma? Will it be Etta and Otto and Russell and James by Emma Hooper, backed by Michelle Morgan? Or will it be A Two-Spirit Journey by Ma-Nee Chacaby, written with Mary Louisa Plummer, championed by Shayla Stonechild? Which two books head to the grand finale tomorrow? I will remind folks, or maybe tell them for the first time if they're just tuning in now, on day 1, Watch Out for Her was voted out in a 4-1 vote. Maggie, that day you voted differently. You voted for Etta and Otto and Russell and James. In day 2, it was a 3-1 vote, and Jennie's Boy was voted off. Maggie, you went in a different direction that day and voted for Dandelion, truly embracing the wild card side of being a Canada Reads panelist. Thank you. I have the votes. in my hands. Michelle Morgan, how did you vote?
To vote for Dandelion.
We have one vote against Dandelion. Shayla Stonechild, how did you vote?
Etta and Otto and Russell and James.
2 votes are on the table. 1 to eliminate Dandelion, 1 to eliminate Etta and Otto and Russell and James. Saïd M'Dahoma, how did you vote?
Two-Spirit Journey.
Okay. We have 3 votes on the table. 3 different books, Dandelion, Etta and Otto and Russell and James, and a Two-Spirit Journey. Linwood Barclay, how did you vote?
Dandelion.
We have 2 votes against Dandelion. Maggie Mac Neil?
Etta and Otto and Russell and James.
Okay, with 2 votes against Otto and Etta and Otto and Russell and James, and 2 votes against Dandelion, we have a tie. What does that mean? Let's turn to the Canada Reads rule book.
We have a tie. The panelist who did not vote against either of the books up for elimination must break the tie. This is the case even if that panelist is defending one of the 2 books up for elimination.
Saïd M'Dahoma, I'm not sure if that fully landed. You are the one person who did not vote for either of these books.
So you get to break
you
the tie.
get to break a tie between Dandelion and Etta and Otto and Russell and James. One of those is your book. So I feel like we know what is happening, but I'm going to have to hear it from you. You need to break the tie between Dandelion and Etta and Otto and Russell and James.
So we're going to keep Dandelion in the competition.
Okay, and with that very diplomatic tone, Etta and Otto and Russell and James has been eliminated from Canada Reads.
Tight.
Okay, well, que dia tan emocionante.
Muy emocionante.
What a exciting day in a way, and that is. I mean, I don't know. I know you came in here with a warrior spirit, Michelle, and you were keen to win this competition.
I was definitely keen to win, but I
Yeah.
also knew I had tough competition. These are both important stories. They both have really important messages, and I'm glad people will read them. I'm also really glad that so many people have read and connected with this book and will continue to.
Yeah. As you process this, I think it's valuable for me to mention that you are a free agent, and that means something. As a free agent, that means something both to Shayla and Saïd, too, as we go into the finale. As you can see, Maggie has illustrated this, voting differently every day. You never know what's going to happen. And that makes for a very interesting show, and some work on your part is ahead of you. And I will tell you this also, not just to comfort you. This is many people will be aware. Etta and Otto did hit #1 on the CBC bestsellers list. This book is 10 years old and got to have a truly a second life here on Canada Reads, which is a huge boost for both Emma Hooper and for the publisher. The book was featured at Calgary WordFest, and you got to connect with Emma there as well.
And Emma has 2 novels that she's published subsequently that readers can also check out.
Yeah, all right. And Emma, as we see, continues to get promo from her new friend, Michelle Morgan. Well, that is... That's our day 3, friends. That is also the music. You know, we haven't thanked the Lord or our agents yet, but that is our Oscars cue. We do say goodbye to Etta and Otto and Russell and James today. We're also saying goodbye to the folks listening on CBC Radio right now. If you are watching on television or online, we'll have a few more minutes with our panelists. There are 2 books left, and those are Two-Spirit Journey and Dandelion. I'm Ali Hassan. This was an eventful day 3. Tomorrow, we find out the one book all of Canada should read. That's a wrap on today's debate. We're going to talk about what went down today. We do need some time for Saïd to take some deep breaths, more than Michelle. Saïd, you were definitely breathing a huge sigh of relief right now. I think you felt like you were...
I didn't register that I would be the one breaking the tie.
Yes.
I absolutely did not register. I'm so stunned, and it was, for me, it was so difficult to choose between the two books. Like, until the last minute, I was going from one to, it was so hard.
Me too.
Yeah, it's so hard. But yeah, that book that you are championing is amazing. I just loved it so much. It was so endearing, so beautiful. That love that lasts for decades. That depiction of dementia, and I hope that hopefully more people will understand what it's like and how difficult it is for the people living with it, but also the people supporting their family with that disease. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you've suggested throughout that this book really resonated with your neuroscientist background.
Many people just don't really know, and it's normal to what it's like to have dementia, what it's like to have Alzheimer. Because even sometimes in movies, it's not really well portrayed. And that's why I really like this book. It's because it looked realistic. Yeah.
Okay, Shayla, let me ask you to say a few words about our newly departed, but never forgotten, Etta and Otto and Russell and James.
Yeah, I appreciate how much of a champion you are for this book. Like, for someone that I normally wouldn't choose that book to read, you really made me, I have started reading it for a second time because I do want to come at it through a different lens. And I think you opened readers up to a new journey that we probably wouldn't have been on otherwise. And I do really admire how you are able to articulate yourself in a way that is similar to the authors in a way. You take us on a dream and a journey with you, and you can feel the kindness and love that you have for this book and for your mom and for your family through even just the way that you're championing that. And that made me, I'm rereading it for the second time because of you. And so you've convinced me to widen my scope of books and my reading itself. And yeah, you're tough competition too.
You know, talking with you about it, I'll just quickly say, made me realize how tricky it is because on this show, they've purposely picked people with different reading backgrounds and different tastes. And so when you pick a book that's very specific to my type of reading, my type of storytelling, it, you know, automatically won't appeal to everyone at the table in some ways. So that's part of the challenge.
Sure. Maggie, you had voted against the book too, but had some kind things to say about Etta and Al today.
Yeah, it was never a book I probably would have picked up otherwise. So it was really interesting to step out of my comfort zone, similar to Shayla. But I do appreciate the multifacetedness of it. There are so many different angles to talk about, and I think it stimulated some really, really good dialogue. But I also really enjoyed your arguments and how passionate you were for it. You convinced me otherwise yesterday, so I really appreciate that.
Linwood, you had suggested during the radio show that you had gotten a lot to think about, and the vote was not necessarily going to be against Dandelion as it was.
I thought I knew what I was going to do before the show started today, what book I was going to vote off, and it was going to be Etta and Otto. And through the course of the hour, I just kept thinking about it, and particularly the last line when you talk about when she feels the wind and coming in, and I thought, I have some issues with the novel. It's a little too esoteric for me, but it has the finest writing of any of the books on the table, I think. And it's the most imaginative, it's the most creative. And when it finally came down to it, I thought, I couldn't bring myself to vote that one off.
I appreciate that.
Any words to say to Emma Hooper in this moment?
I know Emma now. We've become friends. She stayed with me. I think she's so happy the book is here. It's gotten a second life. And I know she's proud of me. So, hi, Emma. You can write a song about this experience.
Yeah, I was going to say probably at home playing some ukulele to music right now. And Emma can take comfort in the fact that it's a bestseller. You know, all 5 books made the bestsellers list for the 9th year in a row. Also, I've been hosting the show for 9 years. Coincidence? I don't know. Maybe there's something that I'm saying that's good. I have no impact on anything, but yeah, there's.
But she is so talented,
exciting.
and I'm so happy people are introduced to her.
Absolutely. Well, that is a wrap on Canada Reads today. My thanks to our panelists, Linwood Barclay, Maggie Mac Neil, Saïd M'Dahoma, Michelle Morgan, and Shayla Stonechild. They'll all be back tomorrow We'll see you then. I'm Ali Hassan. Until then, read on, Canada.